Okay. You can probably see me now. Let's see. Can I see myself? Perfect. Hey everybody, it's now 11:30 in this part of the world, so I'm going to get started. I'm going to leave this on the screen for a little bit for the first couple minutes while I explain what's going on. So today I'm doing a presentation about how to design games for judge conferences. Um, Isaac asked me to do something like this a month or two ago, and then at the same time, we had a local conference that I was at yesterday where Richard Neal asked me to do a presentation that was actually a game. So what you are getting is me killing two birds with one stone, where we play a game about how to design games for judge conferences. Um, so if you would like to join in, you can join the quiz by clicking the link that is in the chat. It looks like we have 7 people right now. Or the thing that is on the screen right now, if you go to that QR code or either of those URLs, it should bring you into the quiz. I'm just going to give this another minute because I don't see a lot of people, and I see definitely more people in the Discord channel than have joined, and I want to make sure that people have the opportunity to jump in. And I will say, having done this yesterday in person, there was a lot of back and forth with the audience about things that I said wrong, questions, things like that. Please jump in the chat. I will respond to your commentary. I see 7 all users and 5 active users, so we'll give it another minute. It's okay. Feel free to correct me, tell me I'm wrong, join in the chat however you would like. I will see it. I will respond. This was a lot of fun with people in person yesterday because it was just 45 minutes of them telling me all of my questions were stupid. So that was fun. Okay. I think I'm going to click the go button. I believe you can still jump in later if you have not been able to get in yet. But now I will click the go button and let everybody see what's going on. And I'm going to turn off my camera and switch to the view where you can actually see the questions as I talk. Let's close this. Turn that off. Change windows. Do this one. And click start. Okay, so this is the slide where I was supposed to give my introduction, which I've already done because we were waiting for people to jump in. So the way that this will work is I have questions here that are about things that are relevant to creating judge quizzes. And you might not know the answers to the questions when they are asked because I am using the questions as a device to set up me telling you about how you should run quizzes. So feel free to answer however you would like. We will have some sort of winner at the end. Hopefully you enjoy all of my questions. So we go to the first question. Which of these are important reasons to have a game show, quiz, or other activity at a judge conference? Is it can get attendees more engaged? I will come to your conference. It adds something unique to the conference, or you get more foils. So I'll give it a minute for at least a few people to give answers. It looks like we have all 4 people that I think have joined. Hey, there's 5 now. Great. 5 is a bigger number than 4. So I'll click the next button and reveal that the answers that I had are that it can get attendees more engaged and that it adds something unique to the conference. I think those are both pretty clear, but let's talk about them a little bit. There are many. Oh, what did you? Yes, yeah, Isaac. I'm not going to. I can't promise that I will definitely go to your conference if you have a game show. And I mean the word important is in the question, so I don't know how important it is for me to be there, but that's okay. So at judge conferences, there tend to be some presentations that are a little bit dry, a little bit heavy. We're talking about the IPG, we're talking about rules, we're talking about Commander, and they might be less interesting to some judges who already know them or whatever. And having a game show or a quiz or something like this allows everybody to be engaged, enjoy the questions, kind of root for whatever team they want, or really be active in a presentation, whereas that might not be available for some of the other ones. So getting attendees more engaged, big reason to do it. And it adds something unique to the conference. Not all conferences get to have something like this. There is a fair amount of work that it takes to setting up a quiz like this, doing all the other aspects, and it's not something you can always have. So people like having something unique that they might not have seen before. Of course, you do not get more foils for having a game show, so that is not a correct answer. And again, I am not definitely going to come to your conference. I apologize, I cannot come to everything. Okay, we go to the next question. What are good ways to convince a conference organizer to let you build and present a game? Is it tell them you really want to? Tell them that having a fun part of their conference can be a good break from the heaviness of other judge topics? Ask them what game shows they like? Tell them that you're stealing my game? Or tell them that you've worked and tested your game and it's ready to be tried out? Looks like we have all of the answers. So we will go to the answer slide. So let's talk about the wrong answers first. Tell them that you're stealing my game. This might work, but maybe not what I would have put as a correct answer to this question. So nobody today picked that. 2 people yesterday picked that. I would not advise I'm just stealing Texas Joe's game as a way to convince people to present at your conference. Yes, but stealing maybe implies that I didn't help explain how you should run it. Anyways, ask them what game shows you like. People yesterday really liked this answer. Maybe it is a good way to introduce the idea of having a game show at a conference, but I didn't have as a correct answer here. I don't think it's a awesome way to get into that conversation. And tell them you really want to. This might work, but it's also not super convincing. I don't know if a random person telling me I really want to do a game is convincing enough. So we have our correct answers, which are telling them to have a fun part of their conference can be a good break. This is similar to what I talked about on the last slide, that there are heavy other parts of the conference, other presentations that people have, and having something that's different can be good. So that's a correct answer. And then, of course, tell them that you worked on and tested your game and it's ready to be tried out. This is kind of the advanced version of tell them you really want to. It's, well, I've already done all the work. I've made this game. I've tested it. I figured out that it's, ready to go. That's a really easy sell to an organizer to be like, yeah, this is going to be great. It's ready. I think it's going to be good. Rather than I just want to try something. Please tell me to do it please tell me that I can do it even before I start working on it. Okay, we go to the next question. Which of these games which of these have I used as inspiration for judge conference games? University Challenge, Tenable, Jeopardy, Actually, and Ask Me Another. Okay, it looks like everybody has submitted an answer. So we'll go to, we have 6 people now. We will move to the next slide and see that the correct answer is everything but Jeopardy. So I'm not going to talk about these individually, but I have done each of these. University Challenge is a British show that is a quiz bowl type of thing, 2 teams that buzz in and try and answer trivia questions against each other. Tenable is a British game show where people have to complete top 10 lists. Actually is a great show that College Humor does, where people have to, or I came up with a bunch of statements and my panelists had to correct parts of those statements. That was really fun. I did that for the US West conference last year. Maybe I should find a way to insert that into some other conference elsewhere where it isn't just US West folks. And then Ask Me Another is an NPR panel game show that I did 6 or 7 years ago for a USA South conference, and one in the Northwest. And of course, Jeopardy. Everybody knows Jeopardy. Yes, there's definitely other people who have told me that they have done Actually as well. In fact, someone told me after watching my presentation that theirs had like 3/4 of the same questions I did, which is super interesting that we happen to get to the same place. Jeopardy I have not done, and I'm not a big fan of Jeopardy just because the format is very, I don't want to say stale. It just feels like it is one person asking questions and individuals responding with answers, whereas all of these other formats allow for a way for there to be teams or collaboration or banter or other engaging aspects, where Jeopardy is just a very clean back and forth question answer format that I'm not as big of a fan of because I can't leverage my ability to get people more engaged. Okay, we go to the next question. If you know what game you want and when you will present it, what's a good next step to build it? Is it to ask judges to submit questions, research super difficult layers questions, figure out which tools you will need, or post about how great your game will be on Facebook? Looks like we have 4 people who've submitted so far. I'll wait another second. Okay, I'm going to move on to the answers now. So the next step is figure out which tools you will need, and everybody got it right. So I'll tell you why the other ones are wrong. This question is kind of a vehicle for me to move on to the next part of my presentation, which will be about tools that you would use to run a quiz or run a game. But I'm not going to start by asking judges to submit questions. If people tell me about questions they'd like to see on my quizzes, I'll certainly use them, but I'm not going to go out and solicit those. Yes, congratulations, Isaac. You got it right. I'm not going to go out and solicit questions. I want to author my questions myself and have some control over that. You'll see me talk a bit about that in the authoring section. And then research super difficult layers interactions. Would not suggest super difficult layers interactions as a part of your quiz, so probably not a good idea. And of course, posting about how great your game is going to be on Facebook. I mean, you could do that, but I don't think it's the best next step. Okay, so we will move on to our tools section. First question, which of these are good tools to design and run a good game? Online quiz tools like myquiz.org, presentation tools like PowerPoint and Google Slides, physical tools like buzzers and scoreboards, game design tools like playtesting and prototyping, or gardening tools like a shovel or a rake. Okay, we have 4 people submitted. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on. So you'll see that the first, everybody got them all right. Yep. So one of the things about my quiz, which I discovered yesterday and through this authoring, is I'm not allowed to have a question where all of the answers are correct. So you might see some of these answers like this, where one of them is obviously wrong. So I'll talk a little bit about why these are all great. First, online quiz tools like myquiz.org. There's definitely lots of online tools out there that can help you run a quiz or a game, and they're either free or very cheap, and can help you have these tools like having a distributed ability to play a quiz over the internet, which seems to be working well today, worked well yesterday. That's been pretty good. Um, yes, the same joke was made yesterday. There's definitely, maybe there are some gardening tools that you might need during a game. Presentation tools like PowerPoint and Google Slides. Almost all of my games have always come with a PowerPoint or Google Slide presentation. There's a lot of technology that you can, or a lot of logic that you can shove into PowerPoint and Google Slides to let you do clickable objects to advanced scoring and have all kinds of different things in your presentation that make it pop and make it really cool. Obviously, there's a lot of learning that goes into learning how to use those tools, but I would say my number one tool is PowerPoint Google Slides. Then you have physical tools like buzzers and scoreboards. I would say that buzzers are a great visceral way to get people at an in-person conference to be involved. There is something about putting a physical buzzer in front of someone and being like, yes, you get to press the button and the thing's going to go buzz, and then you're going to get to answer a question that many people are very excited about that they maybe wouldn't be if you were just raising your hand or doing something else. It's just something unique that not very many people actually get that experience. So I have my own set of buzzers that I use occasionally, so definitely worth thinking about. And then finally, game design tools like playtesting and prototyping. So these are a little bit less obvious, but they're definitely tools that you should be using. Prototyping, by prototyping, I mean, if you have an idea for a game, you can build a small version of it and then try it out and see if it's fun. There's definitely been games that I've done where I'm like, okay, this seems like it would be fun. And then when I build a couple questions for it, I'm like, no, this is just going to be too pedantic or boring for the people playing it or boring for the people who watch it. So we just scrapped it and moved on, and I didn't put all the effort into building the full game. And then, of course, playtesting, very important. We'll have a whole section on playtesting later. We'll talk about things you need to do in playtesting and how it will make your game better. Okay, we go to the next question. What's the longest and most complicated step of building a game? Is it concepting, authoring, playtesting, or presenting? Okay, so I have 4 answers, 5 answers. I'll go ahead and reveal the answer. And my answer is authoring. Interesting. 80% of people picked playtesting. So I believe that authoring is the longest and most complicated step because I have to do a lot of research on what questions that I want to ask and try to make those questions of reasonable difficulty and relevant to different people and figure out, a variety of different questions. With playtesting, the actual playtesting portion can actually be quite short. In a quiz that might take me 20 hours to build all the questions for over the course of several weeks, I'm only going to playtest that quiz 2 or 3 times, and each of the sessions might only last an hour with a few different people. So the playtesting section is very information dense. It helps you a lot, but it's definitely not as long and complicated as authoring. So that kind of prompts us to go to our section on authoring. So here we have some questions about how I write my quizzes. So what's the most difficult part of writing quiz questions? Is it coming up with many different questions, making the questions the correct difficulty, making the questions relevant to the audience, or making sure you have the right answers? Okay, looks like everybody's submitted. The correct answer is making the questions the correct difficulty. So the other 2 answers that people picked are kind of relevant. They're definitely difficult parts of writing quiz questions. Coming up with many different questions can be difficult. It's not necessarily super hard. I would say it's relatively easy to come up with a lot of different questions that are all very easy questions or all very difficult questions. It's the medium questions that are the most difficult, and that leads you to the correct answer, making the questions the correct difficulty. I am certain Isaac can attest to coming up with incredibly difficult quiz questions that no one will ever have an answer to is a difficult part of building a quiz, or is a thing that you can do and a trap that is easy to fall into. And it's why playtesting becomes very important, because you need to learn kind of what questions are going to be difficult and which ones aren't. And then, of course, making the questions relevant to the audience. This is an important part of authoring as well, but I don't think it's the most difficult part, because I think in general, if you have an idea of what different kinds of questions you want to have, as long as you're hitting the marks on what kind of questions you have, it's not that bad to making sure everything stays relevant. Okay, let's move on to our next question, which is, which of these cards has never been printed in foil? Forest, Bant Charm, Grindstone, Ancestral Recall, and Fork. Never, I might have to catch myself on this, but never have I wanted Isaac to get a question wrong more than right now. We'll see. Waiting for 1 or 2 more answers here. Okay, we will reveal the answer, which is Ancestral Recall and Fork. Now, Isaac's going to tell me that Fork was printed in foil on Magic Online, but Isaac, which one do you think was printed in foil? Not printed in foil. I mean, it says which of these cards. That could be a multiple. Anyways, Ancestral Recall. Eh, Ancestral Recall and Fork have both never been printed in foil. Grindstone was printed as a masterpiece. So let's move on to the next question. Which section of the MTR is 4.2? My response to that, Isaac, is that this quiz has only just begun. Okay, so which section of the MTR is 4.2? We have all our answers. The correct answer is tournament shortcuts. Player communication is the 4.x section, and out of order sequencing is 4.3 right after tournament shortcuts. And nobody picked game rules violation today, which is great because that's in the IPG. Okay, next question. Which city hosted the last Grand Prix? Is it Reno, Lyon, Phoenix, or Las Vegas? Okay, and we reveal the answer. The answer is Lyon. Las Vegas, the event that was in Las Vegas earlier this year was not a Grand Prix and did not have a Grand Prix. So that is not correct. I was there 2,000 years ago. Yes, and of course, Reno was the week before Lyon, and Phoenix was a few weeks earlier in 2020. Okay, so now we move to the next question, which will reveal my true motivations. Oh no, never mind. We have one more question before my true motivations are revealed. Which of these blockbuster films released in 2022? Is it The Batman, Ghostbusters Afterlife, Spider-Man No Way Home, or Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore? It looks like we have all our answerers. The correct answers are The Batman and Fantastic Beasts: The Secrets of Dumbledore. Ghostbusters Afterlife and Spider-Man No Way Home both debuted in November/December of 2021. Okay, so now our next question. Which of the four previous questions was the least appropriate for a judge quiz? Is it the question about the MTR, the question about magic foils, the question about films, or the question about Grand Prix? Looks like we have all our answers. We'll see who got it right. So 4 of you answered the question about films, and 1 of you answered the question about Grand Prix. The correct answer, in my opinion, is the question about the MTR. So let's talk about these. I'll tell you why this is correct first. The question about the MTR is asking you for an esoteric piece of information that I would never expect any judge to actually know, despite the fact some of you knew or guessed correctly. The numbering in the MTR is just so irrelevant to anything that a judge would need to know. I wouldn't even want to suggest that they ever go study that thing, so I wouldn't want to put it on a judge quiz. Now Isaac's going to tell me I'm wrong. Anyways, let's talk about these 4 questions. So this exercise is here so I can talk about the different kinds of questions that I put into my quizzes. Generally, I separate them into 4 categories, which I have an example of each category here. Right. We're getting there. We'll explain. So the question about the MTR is an example of a question that is actually about like a hard judging skill. So these are questions about the IPG, the MTR, maybe some logistics question, something like that, something that judges will actually use that is a primarily judge thing. So that's one of my 4 sections. The second section is magic questions. So the question about foils is an example of this. This could be a comprehensive rules question. It could be a card question. It could be something about sets, about foils, about promos, anything that is magic related. Like to have questions about that. Then I like to have questions about Magic organized play. So this can be questions about Grand Prix, local organized play, the new DreamHack series, pro players, GP head judges, which you could argue might be a different category, but that kind of thing. I like to have organized play questions. And the last question type of question I like to have, is general knowledge questions, which don't seem appropriate, but I do like to include somewhere between 15 to 25% of general knowledge questions in my quizzes. And the reason for this is one, it mixes things up. It makes things not just all dry judge questions. And two, it gives an opportunity for someone who might be newer to judging, who doesn't know all of these intricate things, to flex their general knowledge muscles. So people who happen to know music things or film things or sports things or anything like that, they're going to be excited to see a question that, oh, I have an advantage. I get to answer this question and get to do this thing in this very specific spot here. So I like including that 15 to 20%, 25% of general knowledge questions and then splitting up among the other types. Okay, so that's why the question about the MTR, not the least appropriate, it is the least appropriate because it's just a terrible question. And the question about films, in my opinion, relatively appropriate because it is still a general knowledge question. Let's go to the next question, which is, which of the four questions was the most difficult? Question about the MTR, foils, films, GPs, or I don't know. Okay, looks like everybody submitted. So the correct answer here is I don't know. Some of you picked the MTR question, which is reasonable because that was a difficult question that I wouldn't expect very many people to know. But the truth here is it's very difficult to gauge difficulty of questions. And when I wrote those, I really didn't know which one I thought most people wouldn't get. Personally, I would think the films question would be the most difficult because not everybody pays attention to what movies comes out, but those are also very popular movies. It's very easy to remember, oh, I went and saw these two things last year, or I know they've been around for a while. Same thing with GPs, like anyone, I understand Isaac, but the most difficult is a general thing that it's going to be across a lot of people. When I write quiz questions, I'm not necessarily wanting to write questions that everybody has a chance to answer, more that I don't want to write any questions that nobody in the audience ever has a chance to know. The example that I've been giving is that I wrote a question that showed up on a quiz that I did at a conference in Denver a few years ago, where I was asking people to connect Rafael Nadal to the French Open. It was a tennis question. And the expectation for people to know that deep into tennis was just way too difficult. And it just so happened that one person at my conference yesterday knew that connection, but nobody else did. And in a room of 60 people, when I previously presented it, nobody else knew it there. Example of a very difficult question that, from my point of view, like Rafael Nadal is one of the most popular tennis players, best tennis players of all time. Even someone who doesn't know much about tennis might still know his name. Okay, so let's move on to the next question, which is, what's a red herring? Is it a European term for a head judge, a misleading clue or answer, a type of question designed to frustrate the reader, or a type of smoked fish? So just waiting for one more answer here. Okay, we got it. We'll reveal our answers. So a red herring canonically is a misleading clue or answer, but it is also a type of smoked fish. And as I was informed yesterday, a European term for a head judge, there is no European term for a head judge that is a red herring. However, the answer, a European term for a head judge, I was told must be a red herring answer, so therefore it is a correct answer. So during yesterday's quiz, Isaac, you would have been right. But during today's quiz, I changed the correct answers so that you had to pick the first one. So red herring is when you give a clue or something in a question or answer that turns people in the wrong direction and makes them think about the wrong thing. The example that I used yesterday in our quiz yesterday was that a previous presenter did an entire scenario about doing a backup where it involved a blood moon and a whole bunch of other things and a bunch of card draws. And in the end, he said, well, what if you have a Scalding Tarn? What if there's a fetch land in play? And the fetch land was this red herring because there was always a blood moon, and you had to notice there was always a blood moon, and we were just trying to confuse you with having a fetch land, because usually fetch lands means you can't rewind or through draws. Anyways, yes, red herring is a type of smoked fish. It is a misleading clear answer. It is not a European term for head judge, but that answer was a red herring. And then it is not a type of question designed to frustrate the reader. It is more a type of question or a portion of the question that is intended to be misleading in a way, in a meta way towards a quiz. Okay, our next question. Which of these is the most important after you've created your game before presenting? Is it rehearsing, playtesting, drafting, or tweeting? Okay, waiting for one more answer. There we go. And the correct answer is playtesting. So yes, rehearsing is something that you should do, but I think playtesting is definitely the most important. If you've designed an entire game, yeah, and that's exactly, Isaac points out exactly something I was going to say here is when you playtest your game, it's very rare that you're just going to hand over all the questions to someone else and tell them, hey, give me feedback on this question. For me, it usually involves, like, when I playtest this game, I'm going to get two people to come on voice with me, and I'm going to read them the questions, and I'm going to have them play the game against each other so they can tell me what's right and what's wrong. So that involves some amount of rehearsing and saying what I was going to say. Now, maybe when I playtest this game, I don't give them all the extra spiel about what I'm trying to teach here, just to make it a little more succinct, but in general, that's the idea. Playtesting also involves rehearsing, and if you're going to run a game, it's very important to get a couple sessions of getting some feedback about what's difficult, what's easy, what's fun, what's not fun, because the last thing you want to do is show a game to a big conference where everybody's confused, doesn't know how it works, and people don't get very much out of it because it wasn't fun to watch or play. Okay, so that brings us to our next section on playtesting. So what are good reasons to playtest? Making sure the game is fun for participants, finding errors, making sure the game runs smoothly, assessing the difficulty questions, or showing off your difficulty level of questions, or showing off your writing skills. Everybody has answered, and indeed, all four of these are good reasons to playtest. You do want to make sure the game is fun for participants. I've definitely designed a couple games that ended up being less fun or more confusing for people, and through playtesting, been able to eliminate parts that made it more difficult or made it less fun. Of course, finding errors, very important as part of a playtest. You don't want to have questions that have errors in them, because then you're going to look foolish, or people are going to trust you less when you have lots of problems or grammatical errors or things like that. And then, of course, in the same vein as the first one, making sure the game plays smoothly. The rehearsing part of playtesting, also very important for this. This being the fourth or fifth time that I've run through this, things are going more smoothly now than the first time I walked through this presentation, because I know what's coming and I know how to explain everything. And then, of course, assessing the difficulty level of questions, something that's very difficult to do on your own, but when you playtest a game and show the questions to many different people, if you have questions that nobody can get the answer to, you know that's a difficult question, you might need to deal with it. Okay, we go to the next question. What should you ask playtesters to do when they try their game, while they try your game? Try to win, give feedback all at the end, stop you and tell you something is wrong, think about how questions could be better, or try to write new questions for you. Okay, and our answers here are stop you and tell you something is wrong, and think about how questions could be better. So this is kind of a tricky word question here too. I'm never going to tell my playtesters that they need to try to win when we're playtesting. I would rather have maybe some people who are trying to win, some people who are trying to enjoy it in a different way, a variety of different perspectives on my game. So I'm never going to instruct them to try to win. What I'll do is just have Isaac come playtest, and then I'll know that he's going to try to win, because that's Isaac. Anyways, give all the feedback at the end. This is kind of a foil to the third answer, stop you and tell you something is wrong. I would much rather someone in the middle of a quiz that we are playtesting say, hey, this doesn't make sense. I don't know what's going on here, or this is too difficult. Rather than wait until the end and tell me everything right at the end, because then it's going to be difficult for me to go back and think about a question and really pick it apart. Also, if someone tells you something's wrong in the middle of a game, it means that you also have the opportunity to fix the problem that might be wrong with the game before you continue, and then try out the new version instead of just playing a broken version for the rest of the playtest session. Think about how questions could be better. This is pretty obvious. Part of something you should be doing as playtesting is thinking about the questions, making sure they make sense, or there's some improvements that you could be made. And then, of course, try to write new questions for you. Not the best thing to be thinking about during a playtest. I don't mind if people tell me questions in general, but not something that I'm going to want to solicit from my playtesters. Okay, next question. Which person makes the best playtester? A judge who's completed the quizzes on every Judge Academy module, a judge who also presents games and quizzes, a new judge, an L3, or a judge who plays lots of games? I know Isaac wants to answer. He's so close to coming back. Okay, the correct answers here are, or is, a judge who also presents games and quizzes. So I'll explain this a little bit more. Obviously, someone who's completed all the quizzes on Judge Academy modules doesn't have anything special about them that they might be able to help you playtest with. But specifically, I like judges who present games and quizzes because they understand part of the game design elements of the things that I'm trying to do. They tend to give me better feedback. Now, that said, that doesn't mean that you should only include those types of people in your playtests. Having new judges, having L3s, experienced judges who've been around for a long time, be involved who maybe haven't before is going to give you different perspectives, and that's important. But I think the best playtesters and the best feedback often comes from people who have done this a whole bunch. I'm always happy to help people playtest their games, so please reach out, send me question lists, do whatever you want. I will help you. I love doing that. Okay, let's go to the next question. You receive feedback that your questions are too hard. Which of these should you consider? Replace some of the hardest questions with easier questions, rewrite some hard questions to give more hints to the correct answers, remove red herring answers to make every correct answer obvious, playtest more in case the feedback was wrong, or keep track of subjects you tend to write difficult questions for. I'm going to wait a little bit longer, but we're approaching time, so I'm going to try and speed through the rest of these because we still have several questions. So let's take a look at the answers. Correct answers here are replace some of the hardest questions with easier questions. Definitely something you can do. Sometimes there are questions like the tennis question I was talking about earlier, just too hard, get it out of here, let's get an easier question in here. Rewrite hard questions to give more hints. So this is a strategy you can have for writing questions is rather than just say what is X and asking for an answer, you can give a more Jeopardy style clue where there are extra hints in the question that might point people in the right direction of the answer. So that's a good way to make things a little bit easier. Keep track of subjects that you tend to write difficult questions for. Excellent strategy. Something that I do. I know there's like sports questions and certain things that I know a lot about that if I ask questions about football or hockey, very few judges are going to know the answers to. So I need to ask very light questions in those areas. And then, of course, playtest more in case the feedback was wrong. Wrong answer here. Wrong answer here because I would rather rewrite my questions and then playtest instead of playtesting more and then having to rewrite my questions and then playtest more. The editing process is often iterative of every playtest that happens. I'm going to take the feedback, change the things that I need to change, and then go playtest again. So I don't want to playtest multiple times in a row without making changes because it means the data I'm getting isn't as useful. Okay, we go to the next question. You have your game polished and tested. Your conference is coming up. What's the next step? Is it presenting, receiving feedback, finding judges to participate, or playing a game of Commander? Okay, so let's take a look at the answers. So the correct answer here is finding judges to participate. So if you have a game that requires judge participation, very like focused judge participation, it's going to be important to find the judges that you want to be involved in the presentation. Playing a game of Commander can be fun, but maybe not your best option. And of course, presenting right away kind of implies that you're just going to pick whatever volunteers show up day of. And often that's not the best option because they're not going to know what the game is, how the rules work. You can have a fun presentation or a fun game where there's very complicated rules that the people who are playing, correct, it does work for this style, but that's not always the best option. Is when you have a complicated game, like Isaac would know, when I did Only Connect, I needed to like play a sample game with the people who were in the presentation in order to tell them how the thing even worked, because they would not have understood if we just jumped right into it. And finding good people that will interact well as contestants is also very important. Okay, next question, or the next section, players and rules. Which are good ways to find participants for your game? Just let everyone play if they want to, post a solicitation form on the forums, ask everyone at the event the previous weekend if they want to participate, or talk to specific people or ask specific people if they would like to play. Okay, so let's take a look at the answers here. Let everyone play if they want to. That's obviously what I did here, so I think that's a reasonable answer. Post a solicitation form on the forums. I have done this before. Just let everybody know, hey, I'm doing this presentation. I need people. This is the kind of thing that it would involve. This lets you get lots of different people to see if they're interested. And then I also like the option of talking to specific people you'd like to play. There's definitely some games where I want a specific type of engagement from my contestants, where I think finding specific personalities or people that I think are going to work well with the format is important. And so I will go out and be like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Do you want to play my game? And then usually people tell me yes or no or whatever. But then that lets me build a specific set of people that will get to play. And then ask everyone at the event the previous weekend if they want to participate. Maybe not the best option because the event the previous weekend may not have all the people at your conference, and spending all your time talking to people that are just not going to be there may not be the best way to use your time. Okay, next question. In a team game, how should you prioritize picking teams? Choose captains and let them draft teammates. Set up the teams to have a regional theme, pick teams randomly, have teams form themselves, or attempt to make the teams as even as possible so the game will definitely be close at the end. Yes, I agree with Isaac that giving new people a chance is also good. I'm not going to go. I'm not going to, for every game, go hand pick my 3 contestants that are people that have all done my quizzes before. That's not nearly as fun as getting new people in and letting them have a chance. So that's why posting the form on the forums and letting everybody respond if they want to is a great answer. Okay, let's take a look here. So how should you prioritize picking teams? The wrong answer is I don't like picking teams randomly because I feel like it doesn't add to the engagement of those teams. So if we look at the other options, these all are places where, or they're all options where somehow we are combining people together in a way that they feel like they had some influence or some engagement with, instead of just picking randomly. So if teams form themselves, they're going to have some reason to be, hey, we want to be together, so we're going to enjoy being a team. Setting up teams to have a regional theme, if people are all from the same region, they're like, okay, now we're battling for our region, that's really fun, and the audience might be super engaged with that as well. And then even if you just choose captains and let them draft teammates, There's a reason why people were picked, and people will feel a little bit more engaged. So that's why I don't like picking teams randomly. And then, of course, the last answer, I don't think it's possible to make teams even so that the game will be close at the end. It's a losing effort to attempt to do that. So I wouldn't even try to make the game close because you have no idea what's going to happen. Unless you've set up like a Quiz Bowl league where you have the same teams playing over and over again and you can slowly adjust it to make it close, I don't think it's possible to try and make a game be close at the end. Okay, we go to the next question. What's the best way to handle a correct answer that you didn't think of? Should you insist that you're actually correct, accept the answer and don't mention that you had a different answer, acknowledge it, accept the answer and play it off as funny, or blame your playtesters? See if we can get one more answer in here, or I'm going to click the button. Okay, we click the button. Hey, everybody got it right. Acknowledge it, accept the answer, and play it off as funny. So the second answer here is also a relatively reasonable option, especially if you're tough on time or tight on time. You could just say it's correct and move on. But I think it's better and you get more engagement if you admit that you were wrong, admit that you didn't think about that, and then play it off as funny. You get more engagement when the audience is laughing at you. They're having a good time. And then, of course, I have also insisted that I'm actually correct and blamed my playtesters before, but maybe that's not the best option to begin with. Although it's worth noting that sometimes you do have to insist that you're actually correct because you are correct. You just have to have a good gauge of when you are correct and when you're not. So maybe don't lead with that one. Okay, we'll go to our section on presenting. So which of these are the names of other presenters today? Waiting for one more answer here. Okay. A pause as everyone goes look the answer. Oh, so it turns out this question was how do you spell Stefan's name? And his name is Stefan, not Stephen. Of course, Kevin, Tobias, and John also names of people who are presenting today. You can go double check that Stefan's name is actually Stefan. Okay, we go to our next question. How can you ensure that a presentation fills your time slot without going over? I say with 3 minutes left. Write a short game, then pad for time. Have additional mini games that you can insert to make the length appropriate. Keep track of how long games takes in playtesting, or practice reading all the questions alone and time yourself. Okay, we all have our answers in. Correct answers were have additional mini games that you can insert to make the length appropriate. So this is something I like. I have a couple other mini games that I just have on hand that if I know I'm going to be short, I'll just do something that takes an extra 5 minutes. It's a great way, and you don't have to use those games every time. Obviously, not going to do it today. Keep track of how long the game takes in playtesting. So the third and fourth answers are kind of related and opposites. How long games take in playtesting is going to more accurately represent how long a game is actually going to take to play. If you just practice reading all the questions alone and time yourself, it will often end up being way shorter than the actual presentation because you're leaving out the time that it takes people to answer, other talk back and forth with the audience. So I would be weary of just simply practicing alone and expecting to get an accurate answer. Okay, we will go to our last question of the quiz. And as we enter the last question, I will note that yesterday our winning score was 1640 by one Charles Ferguson. And Ben it is possible for Ben to pass that score and win for the whole weekend, so good luck. Which of these are good types of feedback to give a game presenter? Whether or not you thought the game was unbalanced or unfair towards one team or another because of the rules, whether you thought the questions were too easy or too hard, whether you were engaged with their presentation style, a list of all the editing mistakes they made, or suggestions for other games they might want to make. Okay, everybody has answered. So let's take a look. So the only one that was not a good piece of feedback is a list of all the editing mistakes they made. I think if you think someone made a bunch of editing mistakes, it's certainly reasonable to be like, hey, your thing was sloppy. If you want some help going through and editing it, let me know, or something like that. But I definitely wouldn't dump a whole list of every single piece of capitalization and spelling that was wrong on them. That doesn't seem like appropriate feedback. And then all these other ones are great things to tell people. I would love to know if other games that you think I would like, um, whether or not you were engaged, whether you liked my presentation, if you think the questions were too easy, too hard. These are all great things to tell me. I'm not going to go into too much depth because I'm out of time, but that's the whole quiz. Ben got the question partially correct, so he has won today and tied with Charles yesterday. So congratulations. Thanks everybody for coming out. I hope you had fun, and then send me feedback or whatever. It's been great. Y'all enjoy the rest of your day.